The water was colder than knives. One second, I was laughing at the edge of the riverbank with my sister, and the next, her hands slammed against my shoulders, shoving me into the raging current below. My scream was swallowed by the roar of the river as icy waves pulled me under. The betrayal burned worse than the water choking my lungs. This wasn't some cruel prank. No, my sister wanted me gone. And for what? A staggering $2.7 billion inheritance that my late father left behind. Money that wasn't even fully hers to claim. As the current dragged me down, I understood. She was willing to kill her own flesh and blood to seize it all. Darkness closed in as I fought for air, my body battered against sharp rocks. Every gasp was a war I was losing. In that moment, I saw her face above the riverbank. Not horrified, not regretful, but calm and determined. That expression carved itself into my memory. I wasn't just drowning in water. I was drowning in betrayal. But fate had other plans. Somehow, against the odds, I clawed my way back to the surface. Broken, freezing, and weak, I made it to the muddy shore. That night, as I coughed up half the river and lay shivering under the cruel moonlight, I made a promise to myself. If my sister thought I would die quietly and hand over everything, she was wrong. She thought she had buried me in the river, but I was about to rise from it. And when I did, I would not only reclaim what was rightfully mine, I would make her regret the day she chose betrayal over blood. The day began with sunlight breaking through the curtains of my father's old estate, the place where Clara and I had grown up. It was strange walking through those long, echoing halls without him. After his passing, the house no longer felt like home. It felt like a vault filled with memories and secrets. The will had been read just a week earlier, and the staggering truth had left the town buzzing. My father's fortune was worth $2.7 billion, tied up in investments, properties, and hidden accounts. The numbers seemed unreal, almost like they belonged to someone else, but in reality they belonged to Clara and me. Father had left us both as equal heirs, though he had always made it clear that the money came with responsibilities. Wealth is a weapon, he used to say. It will either protect you or destroy you, depending on the hands that hold it. Clara had always been ambitious, sharp-tongued, and impatient. While I preferred a quiet life, she craved power, attention, and the endless glitter that money could buy. Even as children, she would steal the larger slice of cake or take the toy she wanted without asking. Back then, I thought it was harmless selfishness, the kind siblings eventually outgrow. I never imagined she would carry that hunger into adulthood and sharpen it into something dangerous. That morning, she came into the sitting room dressed immaculately in white, like she was hosting royalty instead of meeting her only brother. "We need to talk," she said, her voice clipped, her eyes carrying a cold spark. "About the inheritance. About dividing it." I set my teacup down slowly. "We already know what Father wanted. It's equal." Her lips curved into a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Equal is boring. Equal doesn't make sense when one of us is capable of growing the fortune and the other is, well, just sitting around wasting it." I blinked at her, caught between confusion and anger. "You think I don't deserve my share? I'm saying you don't know what to do with it," she said smoothly, leaning forward. "You've always been soft, always content with scraps. Father knew it too, which is why he trusted me with more responsibility in the company. You should just sign your half over to me. I'll manage it. I'll make sure you're taken care of." Her words stabbed deeper than she realized. She didn't just want control. She wanted ownership of me, to reduce me to a dependent, a shadow beneath her empire. I refused calmly but firmly, telling her that I would honor Father's wishes exactly as he wrote them. Her eyes darkened at that, and for the first time, I felt something I never thought I'd feel toward my sister: fear. Later that afternoon, Clara suggested we walk by the river behind the estate, the same river we used to play by when we were children. "We need fresh air," she said, her tone suddenly light and charming, as though the earlier conversation had never happened. Foolishly, I agreed. I wanted to believe there was still some trace of the sister I once trusted. The river had always been our place, a piece of childhood innocence where we would chase dragonflies and throw stones into the rushing water. I thought maybe she wanted to remember those times, to soften the tension between us. The river was swollen from recent rains, moving fast and loud, a restless serpent of grey water crashing against the rocks. We walked along the bank, and I watched her laugh at something trivial, her hair catching the sunlight. For a fleeting second, I let myself believe we could mend the rift between us. Then it happened. Her hand pressed against my shoulder, firm and sudden. At first, I thought she was steadying herself on the muddy slope. But then the pressure grew, harder, merciless. Before I could react, she shoved me with all her strength. My body lurched forward, and the world tilted. The roar of the water grew deafening as I lost my balance and plunged headfirst into the river. The cold hit me like 1,000 knives. The current swallowed me instantly, dragging me under, spinning me like a rag doll in its furious grip. My lungs screamed for air as I fought to kick upward, but the weight of the river pressed down mercilessly. I caught brief glimpses of light above me, then darkness as waves slammed me against hidden rocks. My chest burned and panic clawed at me. I had never known such helplessness, not when Father died, not when life threw its worst at me. This was different. This was death itself wrapping me in its icy hands. Through the blur of water and terror, I thought of Clara. I imagined her standing on the bank, watching me drown. What kind of person could do this to her own blood? Her face flashed in my mind. Not horrified, not regretful, but calm, composed, determined. That look told me everything. She wasn't acting on impulse. She had planned this. She wanted me gone, erased from the will, so she could take it all. I don't remember how long I fought. Time blurred in the chaos of choking and thrashing. Somehow instinct took over. My hands clawed at the surface until I broke through for a gasp of air. The current tried to drag me down again, but I latched onto a branch jutting from the bank, pulling myself with a desperation born from pure survival. My body felt broken, but my mind burned with one truth. Clara had tried to kill me. I collapsed onto the muddy shore, coughing and heaving, every breath tasting of river water and blood. The sky above was darkening, the evening light painting everything in shadows. I shivered violently, not just from the cold, but from the realization that the only family I had left wanted me dead. Lying there, I thought about Father's words. Wealth is a weapon. Clara had chosen to wield it by removing me. As I dragged myself to my feet, weak and trembling, I made a silent vow. If she thought I would vanish quietly, she was wrong. I was alive, and I would make her face the weight of what she had done. I would reclaim what was mine. Not just the fortune, but my life, my dignity, my place in this world. That night, under the pale moonlight and the sound of the river that had nearly consumed me, I realized something vital. I was no longer just Clara's brother. I was her enemy, and I would rise from the water stronger than she could ever imagine. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birdsong and the ache of every bone in my body. I had found shelter in an abandoned fisherman's hut a mile downstream from the estate. The river had left me battered, bruised, and half frozen, but alive. I kept telling myself that word, alive, because it was the only thing keeping my mind from collapsing into despair. Clara had tried to erase me, to bury me beneath the rushing water, and yet here I was. Every throb in my muscles, every sting of my cuts was proof that her plan had failed. But survival was not enough. If I simply walked back to the estate and accused her, I knew how it would play out. Clara was clever, polished, and convincing. She would cry crocodile tears, spin her story of my recklessness, and the world would believe her. I needed proof, not words. I made my way into town the following day, trying to avoid familiar faces. Rumors spread faster than wind there, and I didn't want Clara knowing I had survived. Not yet. The news shocked me more than the cold river had. My sister had already staged a memorial service. In less than 48 hours, she had stood before friends, family, and half the town in black silk, weeping into a handkerchief, telling everyone I had drowned. People were already speaking of me in the past tense. I overheard one woman whisper, "Poor soul, such a gentle man. At least Clara will know what to do with the fortune." My stomach churned as I realized how swiftly she had not only replaced me but used my supposed death to tighten her grip on Father's empire. I couldn't let her win. But I couldn't simply appear in public either, not yet. If she was willing to shove me into a river with her own hands, what else might she do if cornered? I needed to understand her moves before I revealed mine. That evening, I disguised myself as best I could, pulling an old cap low over my face, and lingered near the estate gates. Cars came and went, expensive ones, the kind of people Father used to entertain when he was alive, lawyers, bankers, investors. Clara was not wasting time. She was hosting meetings in his study, claiming the seat that was never meant to be hers alone. For days, I watched her from the shadows, piecing together the puzzle. I bribed one of the household staff, an old gardener who had always been fond of me, to slip me scraps of information. He told me how Clara had ordered all my belongings packed away, my room sealed like a tomb. She even went as far as hiring men to remove portraits of me from the gallery walls. To her, I was already gone. And the thought didn't seem to sadden her. It seemed to free her. One evening, as the lamps in the estate burned late, I crept closer and overheard voices through an open window. Clara's tone was sharp, commanding, a tone I remembered from childhood but magnified now with authority. "The money is mine," she told a man I recognized as Father's old financial advisor. "All of it. Don't talk to me about fairness or morality. He left half to my brother, and my brother is dead. I saw it with my own eyes." My fists clenched as I listened to her rewrite history, her voice steady, her words dripping with certainty. The advisor hesitated, stammered something about legality, but Clara silenced him with a simple threat. "If you want to keep your position, you'll do as I say." The man fell silent. I realized then that she wasn't just trying to steal. She was building a fortress of fear around herself. It was dangerous to linger so close, but I needed more than words overheard. I needed undeniable evidence. That night, I slipped into town again and bought a cheap recording device. The plan was risky, but I had no choice. I had to catch Clara admitting what she had done. I returned to the estate's grounds and bribed the gardener once more to leave a window unlatched. My heart pounded as I slipped inside, the smell of polished wood and old books enveloping me, pulling me back to childhood nights reading in Father's library. But there was no warmth now, only the cold dread of being caught. I tucked the device beneath the edge of Clara's desk in Father's study, praying it would capture something damning. Hiding in shadows became my life. Every night I crept back to change the recording. Every day I listened to her conversations in some forgotten corner of the fisherman's hut. At first there was only business talk, shares, accounts, lawyers. But then came the words that made my blood run cold. One night I heard her voice clearly say, "It's done. He's gone. I made sure of it." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh she used to give when winning a childhood game. Then she added, "No one will ever find out." Those words seared themselves into me. Finally I had the proof. Proof that Clara had not only stolen, but attempted murder. Still I couldn't rush to the authorities. Clara's power stretched too far already. I had seen how easily she bent people to her will. If I revealed myself too soon, I might disappear for real this time. I needed allies, people she couldn't manipulate. I thought of Father's lawyer, an old man named Grant who had always been loyal to him. If anyone would believe me, it was him. Meeting him wasn't simple. I couldn't walk into his office without drawing attention. So I waited until he returned home late one evening, and when he stepped from his car, I approached him from the shadows. His eyes widened, his face pale as he whispered my name. "Good Lord, you're supposed to be dead." "Not dead," I said, my voice hoarse. "But if Clara has her way, I will be." I told him everything about the river, the shove, the recordings. He listened, trembling slightly, his hand gripping his briefcase. At the end, he swore to help me, to gather what legal weight he could and shield me from Clara's influence. For the first time since crawling from the river, I felt a flicker of hope. But hope is fragile, and Clara was not blind. She began to sense resistance. The next night as I approached the hut, I noticed something chilling. Footprints in the mud that weren't mine. Someone had been there. Someone searching. My heart hammered as I realized the truth. Clara was already hunting me. The footprints outside the hut haunted me through the night. I sat awake in the dark, every creak of the wood, every rustle of wind through the broken shutters making me flinch. Someone had been close, too close. If Clara had sent people to track me, then my secret was slipping through cracks I hadn't even seen. I gripped the small recorder in my hands like it was my only weapon, the only proof standing between me and the death she had already tried to write for me. Sleep never came. By dawn, I was exhausted, hollow-eyed, but my resolve burned brighter than before. Clara wanted me erased, but now she knew I was alive. The game had changed, and I needed to move faster before she cornered me. I went to Grant, the lawyer, at first light. He lived in a modest home on the edge of town, a sharp contrast to the wealth he managed for others. He looked weary when he opened the door, as though he had aged 10 years overnight. She suspects, I told him without preamble, thrusting the recorder into his hands. You have to keep this safe. If she finds me, she won't hesitate to finish what she started. He played the recording with trembling fingers, Clara's voice filling the quiet room. It's done. He's gone. I made sure of it. Grant closed his eyes, exhaling heavily. This is enough to raise questions, he said. But you must understand, accusations like this, against someone of her influence, require more than words. We need a strategy, not just evidence. Strategy. The word made me feel both hopeful and terrified. I had never thought of myself as a strategist. That was Clara's realm. She thrived on manipulation, on weaving webs around people until they didn't even realize they were trapped. But maybe surviving her shove into the river had changed something in me. Maybe I could learn to fight fire with fire. Then we'll build a case, I said firmly. Whatever it takes. The next days blurred into a careful dance of secrecy. Grant worked from the shadows, reviewing father's will, tracing financial transfers Clara had rushed into motion since my supposed death. I, meanwhile, stayed hidden, slipping between abandoned barns, forgotten cottages, anywhere I could find shelter. Each time I moved, I checked the ground for new footprints, watched the roads for black cars that didn't belong. Twice, I swore I saw men lingering too long near the places I had left behind. Clara's net was tightening. One evening, I risked returning to the estate grounds again. My hunger for answers was stronger than my fear. Through the study window, I watched Clara speaking with two men I didn't recognize. They were broad-shouldered, dressed in dark suits, the type of men who didn't come for business but for intimidation. Clara poured them drinks, her laughter sharp and cold, and for a moment, I saw the truth of who she had become. Not just a sister driven by greed, but a woman building her empire on deceit, willing to hire shadows to keep it intact. A chill ran down my spine. If she truly knew I was alive, then those men weren't just business partners. They were hunters. The following morning, I received proof of her reach. As I crept into town to meet Grant, I overheard whispers at a cafe. A man leaned across a table and said, "Clara's offering a reward. Information about her brother. Alive or dead." My blood froze. She wasn't hiding her intentions anymore. She wanted me silenced permanently, and she was dragging the whole town into her search. Every stranger's eyes now seemed like they lingered too long, like they were weighing my features against the promise of her money. When I finally reached Grant, I told him what I had heard. He looked grim. "Then we must act quickly," he said. "I've uncovered something important. Your father left not just money, but specific trusts tied to both of you. Clara cannot access the full inheritance without proof of your death. That's why she staged your memorial, why she's so desperate to eliminate you. If we can prove you're alive in court, we cut her out completely. But we need witnesses, people who will stand by you when she calls you a liar." The idea of standing in court, revealing myself openly, filled me with dread. Clara would unleash everything she had against me. But hiding forever wasn't survival, it was surrender. And I had promised myself, lying in the mud by the river, that I would not surrender. Still, Clara struck first. That night, as I slipped back toward the hut, I saw movement in the trees. Figures dark and fast, closing in. My pulse thundered. I ran, branches clawing at my face, mud sucking at my boots. Behind me, voices shouted. Men's voices, harsh and determined. They had found me. Panic surged, but so did something else. The memory of drowning, the memory of clawing back to life when everything tried to pull me under. I wasn't going to be caught. Not again. I veered off the path, plunging into the thick undergrowth, my lungs burning, my body screaming in protest. The forest was a blur of shadows, the night alive with pursuit. At last, I stumbled into an old stone culvert by the river, collapsing into its darkness. The men's voices grew fainter, curses fading into the distance as they searched elsewhere. I pressed myself against the cold stone, shaking with exhaustion and fury. Clara had escalated from silence to violence, and the message was clear. The next time she wouldn't miss. By dawn, I returned to Grant, filthy and trembling but alive. He listened to my account with a grave expression. "This can't continue," he said. "We must bring your survival into the light. We'll go to the authorities, not with just the recording but with your testimony. If she tries to deny it, let her. You standing there, alive, will be the end of her game." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe the truth was enough. But as I sat in his study, staring at the recorder, at the papers tying father's billions to my name, I realized something chilling. Clara would not surrender either. Not in court, not in the public eye. If I revealed myself, I wouldn't just be exposing her lies. I would be declaring war. And war with Clara meant blood, not just words. Still, I knew there was no other choice. I had been pushed into a river to die, written out of existence, hunted through the shadows. But I was still standing. The time for hiding was over. The time to rise was now. The day I finally revealed myself to the world arrived faster than I was ready for. Grant arranged a discreet meeting with the authorities, presenting the recording of Clara's words and the documents tying the fortune to both heirs. The officers looked at me with wide eyes, some whispering that they had attended my memorial just a week earlier. To them, I was a ghost returned from the dead, a living contradiction of the story Clara had told. Their shock worked in my favor. No amount of preparation on her part could erase the fact that I was standing there, flesh and blood, very much alive. Still, I knew she would not crumble easily. Clara's strength had always been her ability to twist truth into lies so cleanly that people thanked her for deceiving them. News of my survival spread through the town like wildfire. People I had once known stopped in their tracks as I walked by, some gasping, others whispering. The shock of my reappearance was matched only by the storm it caused in Clara's empire. Within hours, her lawyers filed motions, questioning my mental state, hinting that I was unstable, delusional, perhaps even dangerous. She painted herself as the grieving sister harassed by a brother who couldn't accept reality. It was her word against mine, except this time I had proof. The trial was set within weeks, the courthouse buzzing with reporters, investors, and curious locals who wanted to witness the drama of billions unraveling in real time. On the morning it began, I stood outside the courthouse steps, staring up at the gray stone columns. My stomach churned, not from fear of losing the money, but from the weight of what lay ahead. This wasn't just about wealth. It was about justice, about survival, about proving that the woman who shared my blood had tried to end my life. Inside, Clara sat at the defense table, dressed in black as though still mourning. Her expression was a mask of calm, but her eyes locked on me with icy rage. For a moment, the world around us disappeared, and it was just the two of us, the brother who had crawled out of the river and the sister who had shoved him in. I could almost hear the splash again, feel the cold water closing over me. But now I wasn't drowning. I was standing tall, and she knew it. The prosecution began by playing the recording. Clara's voice filled the courtroom. "It's done. He's gone. I made sure of it." A murmur swept through the crowd, eyes turning to her in disbelief. Her lawyer rose immediately, objecting. claiming the audio was manipulated. But the judge allowed it. Clara's mask didn't crack. She even managed a small laugh, shaking her head as though humored by the absurdity. "That could be anyone," she said smoothly. "It's ridiculous to suggest I would harm my own brother. I loved him." When it was my turn to testify, the courtroom fell silent. I recounted everything: our argument in the estate, her insistence that I surrender my inheritance, the walk by the river, the shove, the desperate struggle against the current. My voice shook at times, not because I doubted myself, but because reliving it reopened wounds that hadn't healed. I spoke of the nights hiding in shadows, of the men she had sent after me, of the bounty whispered across town. Every word felt like dragging truth into the light, piece by painful piece. Clara's attorney cross-examined me with surgical precision, poking at holes, suggesting that my injuries could have come from an accident, that my paranoia about being hunted was nothing more than grief and trauma twisting my mind. "Isn't it possible," he asked, leaning close, "that your sister has done nothing but mourn you, and now you seek to punish her with wild stories because you resent her success?" The room buzzed with tension. I held his gaze and answered firmly. If mourning me meant shoving me into a river and hiring men to finish the job, then yes, she mourned me well. The case stretched on for days. Each time I thought the tide was turning, Clara found a way to sway it back. She cried on the stand, tears rolling down her cheeks as she described her devastation at my disappearance. She spoke of sleepless nights, of praying for my soul, of how much she had loved me. Many in the gallery wiped their eyes, moved by her performance. I watched in disbelief, wondering how the same woman who had tried to drown me could summon such flawless sorrow. Her lies were silk, and for a moment, I feared even the judge might be wrapped in them. But then cracks began to show. Witnesses were called, staff from the estate, townsfolk, even the gardener I had bribed. Some spoke nervously, others with hesitation, but enough of their words aligned with mine. They remembered Clara ordering my belongings packed away hastily, her strange urgency about closing financial accounts, her words spoken in moments when she thought no one was listening. Each testimony was a thread, and slowly, those threads began to weave a noose around her. The turning point came when the financial advisor I had overheard finally took the stand. At first, he tried to protect her, stumbling over his answers, but under oath, the weight of perjury pressed down. Finally, his voice broke as he admitted, "She told me her brother was gone, that she saw it, that he wouldn't be back." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. For the first time, Clara's composure cracked. Her eyes widened, and a flicker of true panic flashed across her face. In that instant, I knew we had her. The closing arguments painted the story clearly. Mine was one of survival against betrayal. Hers was one of lies layered too thickly to stand. When the judge finally spoke, the room held its breath. This court recognizes the testimony of the plaintiff, supported by evidence and witness accounts. Clara Montgomery is hereby charged with attempted murder and fraud. Gasps filled the air as Clara's face turned ashen. The gavel struck, and the weight of justice fell. As officers approached her, she turned to me, her voice low but venomous. "You should have stayed in that river. This isn't over." Her words chilled me, but they also freed me. For the first time since Father's death, the truth was no longer hidden in shadows. The world saw her for what she was. I stepped out of the courthouse into the sunlight, feeling the warmth on my skin, the noise of the crowd behind me fading. The inheritance was safe, yes, but that hardly mattered anymore. What mattered was that I had survived, that I had fought, and that Clara's hands could no longer reach me. Or so I thought. Because as the crowd parted and I looked at the faces around me, I realized her final words weren't empty. War with Clara wasn't finished. Not yet. The courthouse victory should have felt like the end, but in truth, it only marked the beginning of the final chapter between Clara and me. 4 days after her arrest, I couldn't shake her words. "This isn't over." They echoed in my mind like a curse. Even locked in a cell, stripped of her fortune and reputation, I knew my sister's will was sharp enough to cut through iron. Clara had always been relentless. She didn't surrender, she plotted. And though the gavel had come down on her crimes, part of me feared she was still playing her game, waiting for her next move. I spent the following weeks at Father's estate, reclaiming the rooms she had sealed, walking the halls she had tried to erase me from. The house was mine now, yet it felt haunted, not by spirits but by betrayal. Every corner reminded me of her laughter, her presence, and the moment her hands pushed me into the river. Still I forced myself to stay. Leaving would mean surrendering the very legacy she tried to steal. I poured myself into restoring what she had corrupted, reopening Father's study, rehanging portraits, reinstating staff who had been dismissed under her rule. Slowly, the house began to breathe again, no longer Clara's fortress but a home. Yet peace was fragile. Letters arrived almost daily, anonymous, but I knew their tone. Messages slipped through cracks in the system, words dripping with venom. Enjoy it while you can. You'll never truly be rid of me. At first, I thought they were the ramblings of someone trying to unsettle me. But then one night, I found a small shard of glass lodged in the tires of my car, deliberately placed. Another time, I returned home to find the back door ajar, though nothing had been taken. Each incident whispered the same truth. Clara's reach stretched beyond prison walls. Fear threatened to consume me, but fear was what she wanted. I refused to let her dictate my life anymore. Instead of retreating, I doubled my efforts. I strengthened security at the estate, surrounded myself with people I trusted, and began working with Grant to establish foundations in Father's name, channeling the fortune into causes that reflected his values. For the first time, the billions felt less like a burden and more like a shield, one I could wield against the darkness Clara left behind. Months passed, and slowly, the whispers of her influence grew quieter. The town stopped speaking of her as the grieving heiress, and instead as the disgraced sister who had let greed rot her soul. She became a cautionary tale, while I, the brother who survived, was seen as both victim and guardian of Father's legacy. For a while I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the chapter was closing. Then came the night I faced her one final time. It happened during a prison transfer. Clara had appealed endlessly, her lawyers dragging every loophole through the courts, but each attempt only tightened the chains around her. On the evening of her final appeal's denial, she was moved to a more secure facility. I don't know if she planned it or if fate simply granted her one last chance, but as the van passed through town, she managed to escape. The details blurred, guards distracted, a vehicle staged nearby, but the result was clear: Clara was free. And if she was free, she would come for me. I didn't have to wait long. That very night, as I sat in Father's study, I heard the soft creak of the back door. My body stiffened. The air felt heavy, electric, as though the house itself knew what was coming. I rose slowly, heart pounding, and stepped into the hall. There she was, Clara. Her hair disheveled, eyes wild but burning with the same cold fire I remembered by the river. She wasn't dressed like the polished heiress she once was. Prison had stripped her of that, but her presence still filled the room like poison. "You took everything from me," she hissed, her voice low and trembling with fury. "Everything Father left, everything I deserved." "No, Clara," I said quietly, meeting her eyes. "You lost it. The moment you chose betrayal over family, you lost everything." She laughed bitterly, a sound more broken than triumphant. "You think you've won. You think money, the house, the name, it will make you safe. You'll never be safe. Not while I breathe." Her hand slipped from behind her back, and in it gleamed a small knife. My blood ran cold. The river, the chase, the trial, it all led to this. For a moment, I saw the girl she used to be, the sister who once held my hand when we were children afraid of thunderstorms. But that girl was gone, replaced by a woman consumed entirely by greed and hatred. "I don't want this, Clara," I said, stepping back, my voice firm but steady. "I never wanted war with you. I just wanted us to honor Father's wishes. But you chose this path." She lunged, the blade flashing under the light. Instinct took over. I grabbed her wrist, the two of us crashing against the desk. The struggle was violent, desperate, fueled by years of resentment exploding in a single moment. Her face twisted with rage as she pushed, the knife trembling inches from my chest. "You should have drowned," she screamed. Adrenaline surged through me. With a final burst of strength, I twisted her wrist, the knife clattering to the floor. She stumbled, her body hitting the edge of the desk before collapsing. The fight drained out of her, replaced by ragged breaths and a hollow stare. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before: defeat. When the authorities arrived minutes later, alerted by the security I had strengthened, they found her there on the floor, broken and furious but alive. She was dragged away in chains, screaming my name like a curse. This time there would be no escape. This time the end was final. I stood alone in the study, the silence deafening. My hands trembled not from fear, but from the weight of what had just ended. Clara was gone, truly gone, and with her, the war that had nearly destroyed me. In the months that followed, I worked tirelessly to rebuild, not just the estate but myself. I poured the fortune into schools, hospitals, and charities, ensuring Father's wealth became the shield he always intended. The river still ran behind the estate, its waters endless and unrelenting, but I no longer feared its memory. Instead, I saw it as the place I was reborn, the moment my sister tried to bury me and failed. The story ended not with wealth, not with revenge, but with survival. I had lived through betrayal, greed, and blood. I had faced my sister's hatred and chosen not to mirror it but to rise above it. Clara's legacy was ruin. Mine, I decided, would be resilience. And as I stood by the river one last time, watching the current rush past, I whispered into the wind, "You didn't drown me, Clara. You made me stronger." Backhand index pointing right if you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to like, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe to Twisted Fate Chronicle for more shocking and powerful stories.